OK，大家好，今天闲来无事啊，然后我想讲解一下这个 The Bible Project YouTube 上面这位大神他做的这个福音推广片的，我用中文讲解一下，大家可以顺便学一下英语啊，然后也顺便学一下这个真道里面道理啊。我们看一段吧。
Crazy story at the beginning of the Bible. We have Adam and Eve, and they're in the Garden of Eden.
And everything in this garden is great. It's exactly as it should be, except there's this one tree that they're told by God not to eat from because it's dangerous and it will kill them.
So that's it. Avoid this fruit tree and we're fine.
Right. It seems pretty simple.
OK，那我们去把它。OK，那这个就是我刚才下载下来的字幕啊，现在大家来看一下。现在大家看，There is 从这开头啊。There is a crazy story at the beginning of the Bible. We have Adam and Eve, and they in there in the Garden of Eden. 这个怎么说呢？There is this crazy story. There is this crazy story， 也就是说，这个疯狂的故事啊。At the beginning of the Bible. At the beginning of the Bible， 就是说，在这个圣经的开头，这个是个定语从句啊。修饰的 crazy story with at the beginning of the Bible 是定语从句，用来修饰这个 crazy story. We have Adam and Eve. There is a crazy story at the beginning of the Bible. We have Adam and Eve. 我们有亚当夏娃 and they in the Garden of Eden. 他们在那里，在那个 Garden of Eden 伊甸园里面。In the Garden of Eden 也是定语从句，修饰 there 啊。OK， 下一句啊。Tim, and everything in the garden is greatly, exactly is it. And everything in the garden is greatly, exactly is it. Should be except there's this one tree that they are told by God not to eat from because it's dangerous and it will kill them. 这怎么理解呢？这是 Tim 说的。Tim 怎么说 ？And everything in the garden is great. Exactly, it is it. Exactly is it should be, except there is this one tree that they are told by God not to eat from because it's dangerous and it will kill them. 这怎么解释啊？就是说，everything in the garden， 在那个花园里的所有的东西。所以在花园里的is great, exactly is it should be， 就像它完全就是非常的伟大。Except there is this one tree that they are told by God not to eat from， 除了这个一棵树啊，他们被上帝指示叫他们不要吃的 ，because it is dangerous and it will kill。因为这是很危险 ，and 这会杀了他们。So that's it，就说 so that's it， 就那就是 just avoid this tree and we are fine。OK， 就到这里了啊。So that's it，just avoid， John 说了。所以那就是这样 ，just avoid this fruit tree and we are fine. Just avoid this tree and we are fine. 它是个问号问句仅仅除了这棵树以外，我们就安全了吗？然后 Tim 又说 ，Right， 对的 ，It seems pretty simple， 看上去很简单。But in this garden， 这里啊 ，there is a snake， 在这个花园里面有一条蛇读过圣经的都知道啊。And it starts telling a different story， 然后另一个故事开始了。It starts telling a different story. It says that if you eat of this tree, it is not going to kill you. In fact, it's going to make you become like God. 然后他说，if you eat of this tree, it's not going to kill you. In fact, it's going to make you become like God. 如果你吃了这棵树上果子，它不会杀你，它会让你像神一样。然后 John 说 ，and Adam and Eve， 亚当夏娃就这样 ，they believe the snake and the fruit， 他们相信了蛇，以及这个树的果子能给他们带来的好处。And it is this the goodness of the garden is tragically lost, and the evil and death. And because it is this, the goodness of the garden is tragically lost, and the evil and the death enters into God's good word. 然后因为 it is this the goodness of the garden is tragically lost， 所以那个花园里的那个美好的东西就是这样悲剧的消失了。And the evil and the death enters into God's good word， 然后罪和死亡就进入上帝所造的这个美好的世界了。可以，接下来就是 Now why is there a talking snake in the garden？ 那为什么花园里会有一条会说话的蛇呢？ I mean this thing is a problem。 我说这个是一个问题啊。Yeah, it is very strange。 非常奇怪。And even more strange is the fact that the Bible doesn't say why or how this thing even got there. Yeah, it is very strange. 是的，这非常奇怪。It is very strange， 非常奇怪。And even more strange is the fact that the Bible doesn't say why or how this thing even got there. 是很奇怪，但是更奇怪的是 even more strange 这一做名词 is something is something， 这是什么语句啊？主系表的语句啊。Something is something， is the fact that the Bible doesn't say why or how this thing even got there。 更奇怪的是，圣经没说这件事怎么会发生。It simply presents the snake as this creature who is in rebellion against God and wants to get other people to doubt God's goodness and lead them on a path towards death。 OK， 这句话有点长，然后就说，it simply presents the snake as this creature。 他就把这条蛇显现了。It simply presents the snake as this creature who is in rebellion against God and wants to get other people to doubt God's goodness and lead them on a path towards death。 他就想把这条蛇显现出来，就像 rebellion against God， 反对神的一个生物，然后把人带向死亡了。And so whatever this snake is， 所以不管这条蛇是什么 ，it's a source of evil that pervades our world and our lives even still today. So whatever this snake is， 所以无论这条蛇是什么 ，it's a source of evil， 它就是罪恶的根源 that pervades our world and our lives even still today. That perverts our life， 这 pervert 是什么意思啊？我也忘了，等下查一下吧。大家不懂的话，就遇到生词就去查一下。这个是 pervades 金先词吧？他看到这个 pervade， 我一般都用有道。pervade 弥漫，变质弥漫啊。And so wherever this snake is a source of evil， 它是罪恶的根源 that pervades our world and our lives even still today， 在弥漫在我们这个生活中以及这个世界上，直到现在。然后 Johnny 说 ，But there is some hope because right here in the story, God makes this really interesting promise to Adam and Eve. But there is some hope because right here in the story, God makes this really interesting promise to Adam and Eve. 但是有希望，因为什么 ？Right here in the story， 在故事里面 ，God makes this really interesting promise to Adam and Eve。上帝对亚当夏娃有这个期望的。Tim，the that someone is going to come into the future. That a son of Eve. And this guy is gonna come, he's gonna crash the serpent's head and destroy evil at its source. And this guy gonna come, he's gonna crash serpent's head and destroy evil. 这里都是说that someone is going to come in the future. 这就是说这个主要就是说那个人啊 ，son of Eve， 也就是说主语啊，就是说耶稣啊 ，Jesus 啊 ，and this guy is Jesus 啊 ，gonna come， 这个是 come 啊，应该是拼写错误。将来的这些都是定语从句啊，所以做主语啊 ，is gonna crash serpent's head and destroy evil， 打碎这个 serpent 就是魔鬼的头啊，然后消灭罪恶，从根源消灭啊。However, during this battle, 但是在这场战争中 ，he serpent is going to bite this guy's heel. 但这场战争中，那条serpent 就是那个魔鬼，就是 going to 咬那个耶稣的脚跟嘛，因为圣经有话说，耶稣要打破那个魔鬼的头，然后那个蛇要咬那个耶稣的人的脚后跟啊，人子的脚后跟啊。So it's like a mutual destruction. So it's like a mutual destruction. So it's like a mutual destruction. 这句话怎么理解 ？So it's like a mutual destruction. Mutual 什么意思啊 ？Mutual. So it's like a mutual destruction. 所以他就说好像是互相伤害一样啊。可以先跳过。Yes, it is a strange and beautiful promise, and just hanging there until the next key moment in the story. 就是说是的，这是个奇怪和美丽的应许 ，promise 就是应许。And just hang there until the next key moment in the story， 在那里直到下一个关键的时刻啊。When God singled out this guy named Abraham， 当上帝single out 就选出这个叫亚伯拉罕的人 ，and say that through his family, goodness and blessing is going to be restored back to all of the nations in the world。所以所有的世界上所有都会因亚伯拉罕得祝福。And as we follow this family, we get to one of Abraham's great grandson, this guy named Judah。然后跟着亚伯拉罕的后代啊，我们到亚伯拉罕的他这个孙子，这个名字叫犹大啊。And he received his promise that a king is going to come from his line， 因为以色列国的君王都是从犹大族派12支派的犹大族派出来的。He received his promise that a king is going to come from his line, and that the whole world is going to follow this king, and he is going to bring peace and harmony, and there will be lots of food and wine and milk in the vineyard, and it's going to be awesome. 所以所有的人都会因他得祝福，将会有很多的这些美好的东西。接下来就会说 ，The first king that we meet from the line of Judah is a guy named King David。所以第一个王就是大卫王，因为在扫罗以后就是大卫了 ，King David。And he is a hero. Maybe he is a snake crusher。也许他会就是打破蛇的头，但是听们说 ，But it turns out that David is in fact with the same evil， 因为大卫也是被那个罪感染了 ，as the rest of the humanity 被人所有的罪性感染。He never crushed a snake, just the opposite。他也没有能打破蛇的头啊。However, God makes a promise to David that this king is going to eventually come from his line。但是神允许这个王人类的君王将会从他的后代出来。 as you go on in the story, one by one, each generation of his sons, they are just totally chumps. They give in to the snake. They choose evil. They go after money and sex and power and following other gods. 说一点长，慢慢来看。But as you go on in the story，接下来看的故事啊。One by one, each generation of his sons, they are just totally chumps. Chumps 是什么意思？Chump 大笨漏、笨蛋一样的啊。也就是说，他们都是属于被蛇引诱啊，他们选择罪恶，他们跟着金钱，跟着那个性啊、美女啊、权力啊。然后变败坏掉了，或者一直拜假神呢，这些都败坏掉了。然后 John 说 ，Things get so bad that they run the nation of Israel， 他们统治以色列的时候 ，right into the ground，run the nation of Israel right into the ground，and the big bad empire of Babylon just take them out。所以他们把以色列给败坏掉了。后来巴比伦打过来，巴比伦侵占了以色列。然后听们就说 ，So now there are no more kings to even fulfill this promise。所以说现在已经没有更多的王去even fulfill this 来应许这个预言啊。所以终于说 ，So seems like the whole plan is lost。就看起来整个计划都落空了啊。Whole plan is lost，plan is lost， 计划被落空啊。Tim 就说 ，But during these dark days, there is this crazy group of guys called the prophets, and they kept talking about this coming king and reminding us of the promise that he will come, he will defeat evil and restore the garden。所以终于这么一个人，一些先知的预言，还会有这个君王会来啊，他们还是相信会这个预言会应验。Now one specific prophet Isaiah。所以这个是 prophet， 这个拼写错误，他是这个先知叫 Isaiah， 就是以赛亚先知。He tells us more about why this king is beaten. He tells us more about why this king is beaten. Isaiah says that the promised king received this wound because of humanity's evil, and that it kills him. 这什么意思？怎么说 ？He tells us more about why this king， 为什么这个君王被 beaten 啊 ？Isaiah says that the promised king received this wound because of humanity's evil, and that it kills him。所以说这先跳过，不要难讲啊。But then all of a sudden he comes back, and Isaiah says that it's because he suffered this wound that he can now become a source of healing to other people。所以他忍受的这个伤呢 ，so can become a source of healing to other people。对别人来说，他可以治愈别人这个伤。But the Old Testament ends and the snake-crushing king that everyone's been talking about never show up。好，现在就 But the Old Testament ends and the snake-crushing king that everyone's been talking about never show up。所以这边 Old Testament ends， 旧约就终结了。And the snake-crushing king， 所以这个 snake-crushing king，snake-crushing 就修饰 king 啊。snake-crushing king，snake-crushing 这一做形容词对吧？能打破蛇的，能击碎蛇的那个君王。That everyone's been talking about， 这个做定语啊，修饰 king never shows up， 从来没有出来啊。And that is why when the New Testament begins, it introduces us to Jesus Nazareth。所以当新约来的时候，他就介绍这个拿撒勒人耶稣。Not as some random guy, but as someone who comes to fulfill this specific ancient promise。当耶稣来的时候，不是介绍一个随便一个人，而是旧约中一直讲的这个应许啊。 Yeah, we learned that he's from the line of David, Judah, and Abraham. 就是说we learned that he's from the line of David, Judah, and Abraham. 他是这个大卫、犹大以及亚伯拉罕的后代，这条线延伸出来的耶稣啊。听没说 ？And he goes around Israel announcing that the goodness of God's kingdom is here now, and he begins confronting the effects of evil on people by healing them, by forgiving them of their sins and evil. And he goes around Israel， 他在以色列遍地走，宣布神国的好的地方 is here now， 现在。And he began confronting the effects of evil， 他开始面对这个罪 on people by healing them， 医治他们，原谅他们的罪过。Many people are not believing that this is in fact the promised king。许多人就开始相信这个就是这个所应许要来的君王。But Jesus began to tell his closest followers， 但是耶稣开始告诉他亲密的伙伴 that he was going to become king and bring peace by taking the full effect of humanity's evil into himself. But Jesus began to tell his closest followers， 耶稣开始告诉他亲密的跟随者that he was going to become king， 他将要成为君王 and bring peace by taking the full effects of humanity's evil into himself。 他将要成为君王 bring peace 带来和平 by taking the full effects of， 这可能是拼写错误，我们跳过一下。That fatal snake bite wood，那个命中注定的蛇会咬伤的。And so it seems like the serpent wins, and this story actually would be a tragedy, except for what happened next. And so it seems like the serpent wins， 看起来那个蛇好像赢了。And 这条故事actually would be a 看起来像个悲剧一样 ，except for what happens next， 除了将要发生的事情。Jesus rise from the dead， 耶稣 rise from the dead 就是复活的意思。耶稣复活了，耶稣第3天又复活了。And now Jesus has the power over evil and death for himself。所以现在耶稣有那个能力 ，power over evil， 还是 power over evil， 能战胜罪恶的能力，死亡和能力。他从罪里复活，然后他从死里复活。所以他能战胜罪恶，战胜死亡，所以这么多人相信他啊。所以听没说 ，So the rest at the New Testament is then taking this claim that Jesus' power over evil and death has now become available to us to begin confronting the effects of evil in our own lives. So the rest at the New Testament is then making this claim that Jesus' power over evil and death has now become available to us to begin confronting the effects of evil in our own lives. So the rest at the New Testament is then making this claim. 所以新约的剩下部分就是这样宣称。The Jesus' power over evil and death， 耶稣战胜罪和死亡 ，and now has become available to us, begin confronting the effects of evil in our own life。在我们生活中的影响啊。But even still， 仍然现在 ，death and evil are real problems in our world all around us。死亡和罪还是在我们生活中是一个问题啊。听没说 ，and so the story of the Bible ends。所以这个圣经的故事就这么完结了。And by describing these future days when Jesus come back. So the story of Bible ends by describing this future day when Jesus come back, and he finishes the job. He destroys the snake once and for all, and he restores the goodness at the garden here on earth， 就耶稣战胜死亡，战胜罪，重新给这个世界带来好的和平，就像伊甸园一样完美的时候。所以我希望这么讲解以后，大家看这个，大家再去看到这个 The Bible Project Animated Explanation of the Messiah， 能够更轻松看得懂啊。好，今天视频就录到这里，拜拜。